No, I'm saying your father, when he played basketball. They probably wore something like that.
Thanks, Bob.
It's a pretty exclusive club on this wall.
Okay, now we want to bring more people.
Rich, drive by. I'm like,
Hey, Uncle Rich. Squeeze in a little bit. Sure. Put the model look on it.
Awesome. Okay. Oh, hi everybody. Hi, Rich. Hi everybody. Hi. Here's him.
Give it a wave, yeah, give it a wave.
Hey, Rich, how you doing?
Hi,
Good to see you, Rich. Jason, give him away.
Yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Everybody's here.
Hey, Rich. Good job, man.
Next up to introduce our next two inductees is former Director of Athletics and great friend and mentor of mine, John Bisco.
Thanks, Mike. I'm really so pleased that I was asked to continue to participate in this wonderful ceremony. The thing that I like most about this evening, other than hearing the stories are fantastic about our inductees, but also is just walking into the room and feeling the energy, the excitement, the great feeling about being together as teammates when you haven't seen somebody for 20 years, 15 years, and you get a chance to talk about the playing days and embellish the stories and become a better player. Our first inductee this evening is James Moose Carrier, class of 1942. As your program indicates, Jim died in 2014, and he will be represented by his son, Jim Carrier. So Jim, will you please come and stand on the podium with me? Back in the 1930s and the 40s, it was not unusual for a varsity athlete to play more than one sport. Wesleyan and other schools on their schedules relied on multiple sport athletes to really fill out their rosters and make their teams competitive. Many football athletes, as we remember, were also very good basketball and baseball players. But Jim Carrier was not like any other Wesleyan athlete of his time. His combination was unusual, but very impactful. He was not just filling the roster, he was leading all of the teams that he played on. As a 210-pound running back, Jim's size, speed, athletic ability, and were very uncommon for that time. From the first game of his sophomore year, he became the go-to guy. Playing for coaches Jack Clout and Wes Fessler, both men relied upon him to be a quadruple threat. He was a punishing, speedy runner. He was the primary passer on those teams. He could accurately throw both the long and short passes. He was a dominating, and I really mean dominating, linebacker. And for 3 years, he did all of the field goals, the extra points, and he even kicked off. What a combination. Jim was an outstanding player all 3 years, as I said. And in one game against Bowdoin, he kicked 7 PATs. He kicked the winning field goal against Coast Guard in his junior year. And he was instrumental in a win over Amherst by being involved in 8 of 11 plays on an 80-yard drive, scoring the final TD. In another game that year, he had an 80-yard run for a touchdown. However, Jim's contribution during his senior year were by far the best of his career. Right from the first practice, new coach Fessler was quoted as saying, quoting in the Argus, "His season's hopes lie on the shoulders of character." In the game against Haverford, he scored 2 touchdowns and threw for another and kicked 2 PATs. Now, I just want to kind of give you a mental image of the story of that game. During the third quarter, he kicks off. Now, today, when most people are the kicker, they kick off, they kind of fall back and become the safety and hope that no one gets by so that they have to make a play. Not Jim. He led the kicking coverage team down the field and was the first man to make contact with the ball carrier. He not only made contact, but he forced him to fumble, and then he recovered the fumble. Against Williams, he blocked the punt, but his greatest came the final one against undefeated Trinity, where number 37, Jim's number, led the team to a 27-0 upset victory. In that game, he was responsible for all the points, passing, running, and kicking. As mentioned in your program, he played in the Blue-Gray All-Star game after the completion of the senior year. And he was recognized by the sports writers who covered the game as the best man on the North team's backfield. And one writer said he should make everyone's All-American team. As mentioned earlier, Jim was a 2-year contributor on the wrestling team and an outstanding thrower on the track team. In the first meet of his sophomore season, he won the shot put and established a new school record. Over the next 2 seasons, he improved that record, and in fact, during his junior year, after coming out from the last wrestling meet, he won both the shot put and the discus and established his personal best. In the little 3 meets against Amherst, he again set a new record of 45 feet 4 inches for the shot. Jim Carrier is truly a Wesleyan Athletic Hall of Famer.
For sure.
Wow, it's tough to beat that. I thought I knew a lot about my dad, but a lot of those stories and figures we were not aware of. And we have 2 scrapbooks of almost all of his successes during his junior and senior year. A number of you came up to me tonight and congratulated me, so I think you can see now I'm not the Jim Carrier class of 42. I prepared a few words tonight, but that was before Megan told me I was supposed to limit it to 3 minutes. So I apologize, Megan, but I wanted to relate some stories that I thought you might enjoy about my dad.
Mike, turn the mic up.
Oh, I'm sorry, is that better? It's my honor to accept the Hall of Fame award on behalf of my dad and family. He would have been so proud to be acknowledged as one of Wesleyan's best. He was a modest man and would have been a little uncomfortable by all the attention. To say our family is beaming with pride would be an understatement. There are 16 of us in attendance tonight, including my brother, 2 sisters. We also have 3 of Dad's grandchildren, my cousin who drove from Cincinnati, and my Uncle Bob, class of 53, Wesleyan class of 53. and Elizabeth did golf and golfing. And my Aunt Myra drove down from Rochester. Ironically, most of the family are unaware of Dad's many athletic accomplishments, but they wanted to attend because they so loved Papa Moose. Dad was a big man for his generation, a 6 foot 210 pounds, but his huge heart and love of family is what we remember most. He would sign his personal letters, quote, "We are family," something my twin daughters had tattooed on the inside of their upper arms in memory of my dad. Not that we approve. I know many of you were probably wondering before that wonderful speech, but I'm sure a lot of people here were wondering who Jim Carrier was and what made him a Hall of Fame candidate. We understand he was nominated because his name kept coming up from a lot of the Wesleyan old-timers. A few bits of information about his career might be helpful. He was a three-sport athlete and a 3-year football starter. He was a triple threat as he started a quarterback on offense and linebacker on defense and also did their kicking. Named to the Hartford Current's All-State Small College team both his junior and senior years. Received the C. Everett Bacon Award, Most Valuable Player Award, both his junior and senior years, and was selected to the All-State 11 Connecticut and Little All-American team his senior year. All of those accolades are impressive, but rather than recount a bunch of statistics about his career, I thought I would tell some Jim Moose Carrier stories. I mean, everyone loves a good story, and I think they'll make Wesleyan proud. So my brother read through the scrapbooks my grandmother had kept recounting stories of Dad's career. I must admit we were all somewhat taken back by the countless newspaper stories about our dad because he rarely spoke of his football achievements. We also went through some letters my mom had given us following our dad's death in 2004. One was a letter from George Morrill, who I know a number of you know, a teammate on the 1941 football team. Dad and George had been friends since their youth. George became president of their class, valedictorian, and a respected writer and author. I think his letter to my mom from one of Dad's peers best describes why Dad is receiving this award tonight. I would like to read some excerpts from Mr. Morrell's letter. Dear Carolyn, sad tidings from Florida of Jim's passing hit everybody hard. Jim was so commanding a figure in our youth that those that loved him can barely imagine him subject to the inevitabilities of life. He was an eternal symbol of strength at Wesleyan. Not just one of the big men on campus, he was the big man. When autumn arrived and football charged the air, we all looked to him. He would pull the team together, no matter how skimpy we were in that year's personnel. Finally, in our last game with the nationally recognized undefeated Trinity, we gave Jim the kind of support he deserved. As a result, the football world saw what Jim was made of. Jim ran for 2 touchdowns and passed for 2 more. It was a 27-0 triumph. It put Jim where he had long belonged, atop the nation's football greats and into a starring position in the North-South game in Montgomery, Alabama. Of course, Jim's impact in college was much more than merely athletics. He jarred guys into thinking they could achieve something in whatever they wanted to do in life. Carolyn, I'm confident after the grief has run its course, you'll draw comfort from having shared your journey with this unique and loving guy. May it be so, George. The Trinity game gained Dad national recognition for his dominance on the field, but the 25-0 loss the week before against Williams may have been one of his most cherished moments. Imagine, if you will, in 1941, The top players rarely left the field, playing on both offense and defense. Dad was also Wesleyan's kicker, so he seldom got an opportunity to take a break on the sideline. On November 8, 1941, Bill Lee, sports editor of the Hartford Courant, wrote, quote, "For a badly outclassed Wesleyan team, there was a balm only in the fact its gallant captain and quarterback, Jim Carrier, gave one of the greatest performances ever seen on an Andrus field or anywhere else." When the nearly exhausted captain of the Westmen was relieved after 58 minutes of heroic football, the Williams stands rose en masse to join the Wesleyan side in giving Carrier one of the most spontaneous ovations ever recorded, a player on Andrus Field. I love that story. Mr. Morrell also mentioned that my dad playing in the North-South All-American game. I remember asking Dad what it was like to play with all those great players from Michigan, Ohio State, Army, Navy, and Notre Dame, to name a few. He smiled and simply replied, "Jumbo, what I learned about those acclaimed players is they're a bunch of good guys, but they put their equipment on same as we do, one piece at a time." Following the 1941 season and after Dad's return from serving 4 years as a Navy pilot, Dad received offers from some of the top professional teams, including the Brooklyn Dodgers, New York Giants, Cleveland Browns, and world champion today, Philadelphia Eagles. A disappointed, incredulous yours truly asked why he had not ventured into the pros. He said he had politely declined, preferring to keep his mind and body in one piece. Interestingly, on October 5th, 1975, 34 years after Dad's final season at Wesleyan, an article was written by Bill Lee, still sports editor of the Hartford Courant, entitled "Wesleyan's Jim Carrier Wrecked Trinity in 1941. The first paragraph read, "When old-time Wesleyan grads talk about football, one of the first names mentioned is Jim Carrier, class of 42. Some say he was the best player to ever play for the Middletown Cardinals," unquote. The article goes on to interview Dad and recount the infamous Trinity game. Quote, "The date was November 15th, 1941, a little over 3 weeks before the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. Wesleyan surprised everyone with an easy 27-0 victory thanks to Carrier. It was one of the greatest one-man shows ever seen in Hartford." One last story, and it's the last, captivates why Dad was deeply respected at Wesleyan. As the story goes, after the 1941 season, the student body at Wesleyan petitioned the athletic board to retire Dad's jersey. The students requested Dad's jersey and awards be put on display in the trophy room of the gymnasium in recognition of Dad's contributions. The board unanimously approved, and number 37 was retired for 4 years, all that was permitted at the time. I have a feeling Dad is with us tonight, blushing from all the attention. He's holding Mom's hand, and they are beaming with pride. They're so honored that Dad is being recognized by Wesleyan for his contributions and accomplishments. But what really makes them beam with pride is the love they feel from their family for Jim Carrier, the father, grandfather, and great-grandfather. He was not only the big man on campus in 1941, but the big man in our hearts and in his life's journey. We love and miss you, Dad. Thank you very much.
Hey, Rich, thanks so much for coming to celebrate Daddy's honor. Love you being here, cuz. Here's the shirt. Go Cardinals. Go Cardinals.
Of our tailgate and our shirts. Much more there? You don't have one at all, Russell? I mean, you bring it?
Rich, make sure you zoom in on the Jello shots and Travis's cigar.
Guys, come here. Come on. She wants us in front of the
Best off, Rob.
All right, let's get some comments here. Hey,
It's great to be here to honor Dad and watch a football game, have a couple drinks with friends. Great time.
Rich, I'm tasting.
Hey, Big Jim, here's to you.
Who arranged all this?
Everybody.
Colby! Colby and Travis. Brooke in the t-shirt. My hat.
Yeah, that's you.
Yeah.
You just better on the ground.
The t-shirts.
There you go.
Yay,
Go team, go!
How do you like the first tailgate?
Oh, the first tailgate is awesome. This is so cool being here with everybody and our fantastic videographer, Rich Brown.
He's the best.
He's the best. Yay!
In 1938, I went to Wesleyan University, where my main activity was engaging in football. Where as a senior, I was captain of the football team, and we had about a mediocre season, but one event stood out in my mind very clearly. One of the an organization called the Carey Camp for Boys was looking for counselors, and several of us from the New England schools were approached and picked up a summer job as counselors. And one of the fellows that was a counselor with me, there were about 15 of us, ended up at Amherst. And that's our deathly enemy was Amherst. And we had a team that had a pretty good record when I was a junior. And my friend Bob Potter was the quarterback on the Amherst football team. And we had a play that took off in the middle of the field, and the play was designed to be a forward pass, but the ball was intercepted by Amherst, and they ran the ball down to the 1 yard line there, and they had 1 yard to go for a touchdown. They ran 3 plays, and the referee said, "Boys, you have time for one more play." And I looked over at my friend Bob Potter, who was then backing up the line for Amherst, and I saw him scratch his head, sort of not knowing what play to call next, because he'd run 3 plays and hadn't gone anywhere. So he called a pass play, and he told his end to just step over the goal line, and he'd hit the end with the ball. So the kid stepped over the goal line. Potter threw him the ball, and it bounced off the chest of this player and hit to the ground. And the referee said, "The game is over." And Wesleyan won the game 19-14, which was quite an experience for me. What else did we do? Oh, then I guess somewhere along in here we went to play in the North-South game, which was an interesting adventure, playing with men who I guess some of the finest football players in the East Coast, were on the North squad, and so I got to find out that other guys that are playing football were not necessarily much better than I was. In fact, you had a reference point of how do we stack up in a little school versus a big school, and guys are guys, and they all have their strengths and their weaknesses. So we did that activity for a while. No, I didn't wrestle for tiddly.
Just for a short time.
Wrestling.
Mostly in fraternity.
Oh, the one interesting thing when I got through playing football in my senior year, I was being chased by the military, the draft, to enlist. That I had to make a decision to get into the armed forces. So I set up with the Navy, but before that time I had several letters from professional football teams to get a tryout with several of them. One of the teams was from Greasy Neal. He was the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles.